Om Shanti.
Hello, welcome, and thank you everyone for tuning into our conversation today on magic and miracles. And I am so delighted and honoured to be able to welcome Dr. Andrea Pennington. So, thank you for being here and thank you for replying to my invitation.
Well, thank you, Karin. I'm usually doing all the interviews around this book project, but it's super exciting to have myself on the other side with you.
Yes, well, I'm super excited about this because you are the co-author of your own book, in a way. So this really would not be complete without us showcasing your own story and bringing it to the forefront. So where should we begin? You are a medical doctor. You are very well known as a celebrity in the States for a long while. You have an acupuncturist, a TEDx speaker, and you are the managing director of Make Your Mark Global and obviously the publisher of Magic and Miracles. So the first question that comes to mind is, how did you make that transition from the medical practice to running a global branding and publishing company?
Well, there's not really any link between medicine and the media. I grew up mainly as a performer. I was in performing arts, so theater and singing and dance and playing piano and trumpet. And I started in television when I was actually 12 years old. And I have always loved communication. And very much like you and I have shared in previous conversations, with my mother having a very British upbringing, we heard around the house that children are to be seen and not heard. So when I discovered the stage and TV and I was given a microphone and I was actually allowed to speak and be heard, I just loved it. So that was something that I did all the way through my life, through my time at university. I managed a TV station and did professional theater and stuff. And so it's always been in me. And I was quite fortunate that soon after finishing my medical studies, I was at Georgetown University Hospital in Washington, D.C., and I manifested magically my dream job with the Discovery Channel. And it was there that I was able to bring together medicine and TV and journalism as the medical director for Discovery Channel. So this has been something that I've been doing, since I was a kid. And when I stopped practicing medicine full time and I moved here to the south of France, I happened to meet a bunch of people who were just incredibly talented and poised and professional, and yet they had nothing. They had nothing online. They had never published anything. And I helped a couple of people out with some just basically kind of private coaching several years ago, just helping them develop their brand message, always, as you know, trying to figure out what is their true identity, not doing like what happened to me in the early part of my career with trying to be something I wasn't. And from there, over the course of a few years, my little bit of consulting turned into a bona fide business. And so just a few years ago, I launched Make Your Mark Global to help other people get their message out to the world through publishing, public speaking, and media.
Wow, yes. So what I'm interested in knowing is, how did this journey of magic and miracles all start? And why are we talking about magic and miracles? Or what was the initial seed?
Oh, I'm sure it's a soul seed that was planted from the beginning of creation, if I really go there. But I think for me, at least in this lifetime, from childhood, I was always fascinated by supernatural things. The idea that there could be spirits or ghosts. I personally had experiences with a little bit of ESP. I could pick up on things before people said them. I had dreams that were kind of precognitive dreams. And it just fascinated me, this idea that magic could be real. And so it was always there. I when I found out that there were people who were, I wouldn't say professional, but like professionally using their psychic gifts, and not like, you know, the 900 numbers in America where it's they call up the psychic hotline. But I mean, when I found out that like the CIA was using psychics to solve crimes and they had remote viewing and ESP laboratories, I thought, wow, so there are other people like me, even though I didn't have any friends that had those experiences. So I was very, very curious. And then I think as I got older, it's always been kind of in the back of my mind, like, what would happen if more of us really tapped into these superpowers? Like, what would happen if we weren't looked at as weirdos and freaks? What if we actually just own it and then sought help? And obviously today, and in this day and age, there are a lot of spiritual teachers and people helping you develop your intuition and other gifts. So I think it's always been there for me, but definitely over the last few years, I feel like the world, especially as an American, the world has gotten so scary and so chaotic that I feel like there does need to be a divine intervention for some people to really wake up, to end some of the suffering and the pain that I see. As a medical doctor, I realized that the American sick care system, you know, we used to call it a healthcare system, but I really believe it's a sick care system. It's set up in such a way that people are not empowered. And really seeing how like even the pharmaceutical companies work, it got me really frustrated because I found that people were not empowered to even take care of themselves, or to get treatment that was really aligned with what they needed. And I won't even get into the political or other social challenges that we're dealing with right now in America. But I definitely have felt over the last few years that there's been this kind of gloomy sense of dread and despair. I've felt like people are looking for help. And I think in the past, people could look to the healthcare system or a doctor to save them, or a pill or surgery. And, you know, you'd think, oh, if we get a new president, maybe things are going to get better. So people have looked outside of themselves for solutions, and it's not working. And I feel like so many people that I've met who have this ability to manifest things, to shift their energy, to improve their health, to attract beautiful relationships into their lives, I feel like it's not really magic. There is a certain art, maybe even a science to it. And so that's why I'm really excited about this book with Magic and Miracles, because I think so many of us have had some things that you might just not think they're extraordinary, but when you put it into the context of life, you realize they're like these little hints that I think if we can expand upon, maybe it will give people more hope. Maybe it will allow people to look for the miracles that are already present and then expand on them.
Yeah, that's great, yes. And the more people who are expressing themselves and expressing these miracles or magic that they know about, then I think that creates a movement. And so at some point it'll tip, so the chaos will fall away, and more of this miraculous and magical happenings will be able to come to the forefront.
I believe it. I mean, I want to say I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic that can happen. I do feel like we're in a period right now where there is a major shift and transition going on. And that tipping point that you're talking about, I don't know. I don't know how it will manifest, if it will become a movement, but I definitely know that the more of us that are able to really get reconnected to the divine, whatever you want to call that, without even any religion, but just really that divine source, the more we're able to channel that through all that we do, I feel like there will be a greater sense of ease and a greater sense of joy that people can experience as they're walking on this planet.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly looking forward to the magic that's going to come through this book, and with the intention that you have to bring this sparkle into people's lives to overcome chaos. I'm really looking forward to that. So what led you to publish group books that feature many authors?
You know, I think I've always been this like cheerleader and coach, you know, even since childhood. But really, the first time that I was ever approached to be in a group book was probably 12 years ago with the Chicken Soup for the Soul phenomenon. And I remember investigating this whole thing and seeing how it could really help people get their message out there. I ended up doing my first group book back, I don't know, I guess 5 years ago with a book called Heart to Heart, The Path to Wellness. And it connected me to some other really beautiful contributing authors, some of whom are still my friends today. And I just realized there's this energy and this power that comes with doing a collaborative book. And for me, I recognize that people like you and other wonderful authors in these books of ours, their voices were not being heard. Mainly because, you know, when some people get on the spiritual path, they don't believe in self-promotion, you know, they don't want to do anything that looks like ego. But I recognize there's so much power in amplifying our voice and raising your profile and prestige, because that's the only way we're going to be able to create that tipping point that you're talking about. You know, there's so many books on the market, but if we collectively could bring our energy together and really share a cohesive message, then all these multiple stories from all these different vantage points can really touch people. So I love doing solo books. I mean, I generally write about a book a year myself and publish. And I publish other people as well at Make Your Mark Global. But there's something fun about lifting up the voices of other people and letting them shine and letting them feel that, you know, I've had this long career in the media. I'm not nervous about being on stage or being on camera. And I just want other people to realize that after you do it a few times, it's not really that scary. And if you really believe in your message, then you owe it to your audience to get it out there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure that's going to be very inspirational for lots of people. So if you'd like to, I'd love to dive into your story a little bit so we can talk about your magic and miracles. And well, I loved reading your story, and it's so beautifully, eloquently written. So it's hardly surprising you do what you do today. So where can we begin? Can you take us to that moment when you're on stage and you're living your dream life? What's going on inside you?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, the year is 2015. No, sorry, it was 2005. And I was on vacation here in the south of France. It was the first time that I was able to be away from the US, where nobody would know me. At the time, I was still working with Discovery Channel, but Discovery Health Channel wasn't, you know, distributed over here in Europe. So it was the first time I could kind of walk around and not have people looking at me and saying, oh my gosh, there she is. And, you know, speaking of manifesting, I was getting to a point where I was really fed up with living inside of the box, you know, being a doc in the box on American television. We had really I had reactively built my media profile. At the time, they wanted me to be very conservative. It was in the Washington, D.C. area, so it was very conservative. They dressed me as a news anchor, and my hair and my makeup were made to make me look older and authoritative. And it really was getting to a point where that didn't fit me, and it didn't feel good. Mm-hmm. So when I had this opportunity to go on vacation anonymously, I said, I'm going to go as Drea, the artist. And you and I have talked before about, you know, words and the power that they have. And it was kind of crazy because, Karin, I found that people responded to me as if I were some artist. And it happened at airports. I left from DC and went to Barcelona and then here to Cannes and Saint-Tropez and Monaco. And people were responding to me as if I was some famous artist. And at first I was like, they can't know who I am. I'm sure they've never seen Discovery Health Channel. We were only in English. So I'm like, how are they responding to me as a, celebrity? And when I was here in Cannes, I met someone and happened to tell them that I sing jazz. And they said, oh, well, then you have to go to, such and such a place in Saint-Tropez. So I went, and sure enough, they got me in, and I was, up there singing my heart out, singing this jazz with this crazy beat behind it. And everyone was like dancing and having so much fun. And it was definitely like this trance moment of bliss. And I remember getting back to my hotel in Cannes, just waking up like, what just happened? Like, they were responding to me as what I considered then the real me. I was like singing with my full emotion, and I was just me. And I thought, this is absolute bliss. And I was like so full of wonder. But it quickly kind of dawned on me that in just a couple days' time, I was going to be back in America, back doing that same old TV thing. I had a big wellness center at the time and had, several employees working for me who were really dependent on me. And I just felt this cloud of doom and depression descend.
Okay, yeah.
And
so what's going on inside you at that point?
I think it was the fear that I was going to have to go back, away from this sense of bliss, back into this box of duty and responsibility and always containing myself. Because even though I was an acupuncturist and I could talk a little bit about that on TV, it was still a very conservative time where people at that time didn't know that the power of thoughts could influence our health, the placebo effect and all these things. So I felt very constrained, like I couldn't be my real self. I couldn't fully express myself in that role. And it left me with incredible feelings of sadness and depression. And I felt really trapped. And I felt alone because nobody really understood that just because I was on TV and smiling and trying to look all happy, I was really suffering inside.
So you flung yourself onto your bed after this wonderful evening. What happened next?
Well, as that depression kind of like hit me, I really I felt like I couldn't go on with my life. And I had dealt with depression before. I know I've shared this with you. Since my teenage years, I had dealt with really dark thoughts and depression. And I said to God, I can't do this anymore. I don't want this life. And I cried out for God to take my life. And I said, take it all. My life, my business, everything. And I did fling myself on the bed. I was like sobbing and just shaking. And it was at that moment that things just sort of got expansive. I felt myself kind of melt into the bed. And the thing that was, I think, most poignant was this light. There was this bright, bright light. And I remember kind of squinting, looking for the source of light, thinking, it's already, daylight here in Cannes. It can't get any brighter. But it wasn't outside. It was actually in my head. I was being drawn into this light, and I thought that God was answering my prayers.
Wow, that's beautiful. So what happens at that moment?
Well, I had that typical out-of-body crossing over experience that you hear about with near-death experiences. And so I literally thought that God was being kind and taking me out of this life. Because as I got to the other side, if you call it that, I just felt complete peace. I felt the presence of I don't know what I would call it, but this loving presence, this loving energy. And I felt such calm, like all of that darkness was just instantly gone. And it was in those moments that I saw my entire life flash before me, like a life review. And I understood how every decision I'd made in life had led me to that moment of being depressed. It was like an instantaneous knowing. And it was at that moment that I understood that we're like these little drops of God consciousness or light. And that when we incarnate, come into human form on this earth, in this vision or whatever it was, this out-of-body experience, I understood that we are really the soul. And when we are in this human form and we take on this ego identity, it's really up to us to decide who we will be. It's not up to our society, our religion, our parents, none of that. And as soon as I had that knowing, that understanding, it was like, oh, you mean I didn't have to be squeezed into these boxes trying to get everyone else's approval and validation and acceptance, because it wasn't working anyway. I mean, I had all that most people consider the American dream, and I was miserable. So once I saw that, it was as if I said to life or God or whatever, I said, okay, I'll go back then. I'm like, if you're saying I can have like a do-over, I'll go back. And that's when I saw this vision of my future unfold in front of me.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. So for those who are wondering, how did you make that transition from having that experience to actually living it in your reality?
I wish I could say it was instantaneous, but it wasn't. I mean, the instant that I got sort of back into my body, I was completely peaceful and blissful again. I didn't have any of that depression. I remember calling up my COO and saying, hey, Nadal, I've got to tell you something. He was like the one person that I could confide in with all these weird things. And he was totally fine. Non-judgmental, was like, okay, we'll put some things in place to change how you're working, how you're living. But it wasn't instantaneous. It took me a few years to kind of break those ties with my career and everything that I had built up. And I'm happy to say that 5 years later, in 2010, I moved here to the south of France and have been able to just really immerse myself in this stuff. You know, the reason that this book, Magic and Miracles, is so important to me is because I went on this journey. I had never known anyone who had like an out-of-body near-death experience who didn't die. You know, like usually people, they flatline or they have some loss of consciousness or some accident and they leave their bodies. That didn't happen to me. I wasn't under surgery. I wasn't under drugs. I had just given up on life. And so I was so curious to understand what happened to me. I wanted to understand these messages that I had received. So I started reading all of the spiritual and self-help books I could get my hands on, going on retreats and shamanic rites of passage and all sorts of things, just for my own understanding. But as I was meeting people in all these different countries, I realized that what happened to me is actually quite common in terms of going down a path, choosing a career, trying to live up to everyone's expectations, getting, you know, some success, and then being completely so miserable that you crash. That's very common. And this waking up and ascending into who you're really meant to be, as you know, that's also a part of this human journey. Like there are many cultures that fortunately they teach their babies this, that you have a destiny, you have a soul, and you're going through this life to figure out what that is and to live it. And so as I started meeting so many people, this was really just a fantasy a couple of years ago. I was like, wouldn't it be great if we finally like did a documentary film and books where people could share their miracle experiences, just so that the rest of the world knows what's possible. I'm not trying to prove that these things are real. It's just,
Yeah.
these were real experiences for me and all of the people in this book. And if we did share them and people were able to say, oh my gosh, well, yeah, I had something like that and something like that. And it might open more people up to living their lives in more alignment with who they really came to this planet to be.
Yeah, I see that as that as well. It's an opening up of consciousness, opening up of awareness, and just offering possibilities so that people can wonder if they so wish.
Yeah.
Well, thank you ever so much for giving us a sneak peek into your marvellous chapter. So what do you hope to see come from this book? Have you anything else to add?
Well, I think it's what I just said there is I hope that it will open people's minds and their hearts to connecting with the divine, whatever you call that. And we can connect with that source energy, that divine love through nature. It doesn't just have to be in weird out-of-body experiences. But just to open yourself to the possibility that there's more to this life than just the drudgery of, trying to get a career, pay the bills, raise your kids. If we could stay connected to our source with this higher self, higher soul, then we can bring more of that light, more of that love, and more peace into our day-to-day lives. And for me, definitely with all of the depression that I dealt with, I feel like having this understanding has helped me so much in just understanding where the gloomy moods came from in the first place. When we're not in alignment with who we really are, that's what we're going to feel. And I think sometimes maybe these synchronicities and miracles are just little nudgings from this divine, perfect universe saying, hey, there's another way to look at things. There's another way to try life. And so I'm hoping that this will open people up to that possibility.
Beautiful. Yeah. I think your experience beautifully illustrates that because how come that when you came to France for this performance on stage, you were suddenly recognised and you were suddenly being cheered on as a great artist? Isn't there some decision along the line? Isn't this your vibration at that moment and it was just reflected back to you in your experience?
I guess that's one way to describe it. I don't know. I mean, people talk about the law of attraction and that what you speak and what you add emotion and intention to, you will manifest. So I think it was a reflection of what I really, really desired in my soul. But to me, it was incredible. It really was like this weird sort of magic that was the beginning of really investigating.
Yeah. And the importance of following that fiery passion, because that's where you're going to get cheered on, however that looks for anybody. That's how I feel anyway. So, okay, have you any last comments for the viewers or anything else you want to add before we unfortunately have to finalise?
Well, I would just invite people to visit the website, magicandmiraclesbook.com, and that way they can connect and see some of the other authors like you, Karin. We have so many beautiful stories from people from multiple countries and different cultures. So I would just say, connect with us, get a copy of this book, and keep an open mind and an open heart so that you never know what kind of magic you might just sort of kick off in your own life. And many of us are also offering free gifts, because some of the people in this book are coaches, they're healers, they're therapists, they're musicians. And so they've offered, little ways that you can get in contact with them and download some free gifts. So that's my recommendation. Visit magicandmiraclesbook.com.
Okay, so thank you so much once again for being here, for sharing your light with us all, and thank you for bringing this marvellous co-creation into existence. And I'll let you give out your final words.
Oh, well, thank you. I want to just say I have sincere gratitude in my heart for all of the beautiful people who have supported this book, who've contributed to this book. including the artist who created this beautiful painting. You don't see it on the screen, but her painting, her name is Laura Cassini. She contributed this artwork that's on the back cover of the book. There have been so many people who have supported us in bringing this book to creation. The cover, that beautiful mandala, was designed by Stefan and Andrea from the Art Bureau Network in Sarajevo. I love them. The wonderful Sarah Brandes, who's been helping us with all of our marketing and social media. Like, I couldn't have done this by myself, of course. So I'm just so grateful that everyone has contributed their energy to this, because I really believe like this collective energy is going to make this book and this message go far and wide. So just
I'm so excited to see where this goes and to feel the magic sparkle with the healing intention of everyone behind this story. So thank you.
Thank you, Karin. Bye.
Much love to everyone.
Much love.